A very good evening to one and all present here. I welcome you all to the 5-day international webinar series on mental health issues of teachers, mental wellness through positive psychology by Department of Education. The 5-day international webinar series on towards mental wellness through positive psychology organized by Department of Education, Meston College of Education, Chennai. Today is the first day. We have eminent professors to speak on the topic mental health issues of teachers during COVID-19. Let us start today's program with Tamil Thai Varthu. I request every one of you to stand on your respective places for the invocation.
நீராறும் கடலுடுத்த நிலமடந்தை கெழிலொழுகும் சீராறும் மதனமென திகழ்வரத கண்டனிதில் எக்கணமும் அதில் சிறந்த திராவிடனல் திருநாடும் சிறு பிறை நுதலும் தரித்தனரும் திலகமுமே அத்திலக வாசனை போல் அனைத்துலகும் இன்பமுற எத்திசையும் இருந்த பெரும் தமிழனங்கே தமிழனங்கே உன் சீரிழமை திறம்பியந்து செயல் மறந்து வாழ்த்துதுமே வாழ்த்துதுமே வாழ்த்துதுமே.
Thank you. Now I request our principal, Dr. S. Devasahayam Selvakumar sir of Meston College of Education to welcome the resource persons of today. Over to principal sir. I request the participants to wait for 1 or 2 minutes because some technical issue from the side of our principal. So he'll be coming back.
Chance. Okay. Hello. Hello.
Yes, sir. You're clear. You're audible, sir. Sir, unmute yourself, sir.
Hello.
Yes, sir. You're audible now.
Okay. Most respected delegates of this international webinar, respected guests of this program, Professor Alexandra Murray Harrison and Dr. Andrew Squarket, Professor Sivakumar, special invitees, well-wishers, and staff of our college. Very warm welcome to you all. At the outset, I extremely very sorry for having power cut in our campus unexpectedly. But however, I thank God Almighty for giving all of us to join at the right time for the inaugural session of this 5-day international webinar on the theme towards mental wellness through positive psychology. You all know that the Department of Education of our college has planned to organize this webinar on this most suitable theme during this pandemic period. For this program, on the first day of this program, we have Dr. Alexandria Harrison. She is a training and supervising analyst at the Boston Psychoanalysis Society and Institute of Adult and Child and Adolescent Psychoanalysis. She is serving an assistant professor of psychiatry, part-time Harvard Medical School at the Cambridge Health Alliance, and she is on the core faculty of the Infant Parent Mental Health Postgraduate Certificate Program at the University of Massachusetts, Boston. She is co-founder and the president of an NGO supporting child caregivers, which offers pro bono mental health consultation and training to child caregivers throughout the world. Madam, on behalf of the Department of Education of our college and the management, staff and students, I accord a very warm welcome to you to serve here as a resource person. I know the time in USA is at 5:30 early morning. I know how much pain you have taken, and in the midst of your responsibilities and duties, really on behalf of the college management, I thank Madam for your valuable presence in our midst. I take this opportunity to welcome another guest of this program, Dr. Andrew Squarchet. He is a fellow in child psychiatry at Cambridge Health Alliance. After having trained in adult psychiatry at General Hospital and McLean Hospital at Massachusetts. His clinical interests include work with survivors of trauma and other adverse experiences occurring during the developmental period, as well as health equity for underserved communities. On behalf of the college, I welcome you, sir, for your presence for this webinar. With pleasure, I welcome Professor Sivakumar, my good old friend, Professor and Head of the Department of Distance Education, Alagappa University, Karaikudi. He is having 3 decades of teaching experience in teaching and research, and he is having additional responsibilities as a Dean, Faculty of Education, and Director in charge for Directorate of Distance Education, Alagappa University. To his credit, he has produced about 15 candidates for the award of PhD and 32 MPhil candidates. He has written 6 books. His publications are about more than 150. He has undertaken 6 projects, and he has organized about 15 national and international seminars and conferences, and he is extending his service to the community in various members of various committees like Board of Studies, Academic Council of various universities and autonomous colleges. To his credit, he has been awarded with many recognitions, particularly Innovations in Teacher Education Award by NCRT. On behalf of the college, I accord a very warm welcome to you, Professor Sivakumar, for your valuable presence and your kind acceptance to deliver prelude address. Dear delegates, you are all from various parts of the country. Really, it is very nice to have an opportunity to meet you all through this international webinar organized by our college. Once again, I welcome all the delegates of this webinar at the international level and all the guests, all the well-wishers and supporters of our college, particularly the guests of this program, Dr. Alexandra, Dr. Andrew, and Professor Sivakumar. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for the wonderful introduction. Now, I request Professor P. Sivakumar, sir, Professor and Head, Department of Education, Alagappa University, Karaikudi, Tamil Nadu, to propose the prelude address. Over to Sivakumar, sir.
Yeah, very good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Because you are at a different time zone, it is very difficult to salute each and every person. Yeah. And I have to thank the authorities of the Western College of Education for giving me an opportunity to deliver the thematic address on this wonderful topic, that is mental health issues of teachers. And I think this topic is more relevant one as far as today situation is concerned. I hope you might have seen. I think you are seeing my PPT. Am I right? Is it visible for all? Yeah.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah. It is a mental health issues of teacher during COVID. Yeah, it's a very good current topic, need of the hour. The reason is, as a teacher, we know well we are facing a lot of issues and problems nowadays during the COVID-19 period. The reason is all of a sudden, all the educational institutions are suddenly jumping into a new innovative virtual learning program. Of course, for the Western countries, it may be very easy for them. The reason is they are quite familiar with all these work. Whereas other countries, of course, they are using that technology, but not very frequently. But what actually happened, that COVID-19 situation, that pandemic period, compelled each and every teachers and as well as students, irrespective of the geographical distribution, whether or economic distribution, economic division, all the teachers and learners and education institutions are compelled to carry out this type of innovative technology, that is virtual learning. That is, they are all switched over to virtual learning. What actually happened when teachers are moving suddenly from face-to-face mode to virtual mode? You see, do you think all the teachers are well equipped with these technological skills? Or do you think all the education institutions are well equipped with all these technological gadgets? or you think whether the learners are having the competencies to learn through this type of innovative virtual learning program? We cannot expect it. Of course, few teachers may have, few learners may have, few institutions may have, but this is not all the case. All the case, still the people are there. So what happened? Suddenly, the teachers and students have to develop these learning or teaching competencies immediately without any formal training, because the pandemic period does not permit them to have the formal training to develop the virtual teaching learning or online teaching learning competencies. So what actually happened? And one side, we cannot move from one place to another place. On another side, it is indispensable to inculcate the various concepts, that is the teaching learning process we have to carry out. So often we are finding very difficult to balance both the teaching and as well as living. And these two things are balancing is very difficult. That leads to mental health issues, definitely. But I would like to say one thing here. Often people are confusing with the mind and brain. You see the first slide, what I am showing is a brain. It's not a brain. And see another thing, the brain do some exercise. And people are not accepting what brain and mind are saying. We can draw a sharp demarcation line between the mind and brain. You see that mind is a hypothetical organ as far as the biology is concerned. Biologists are saying, no, brain is there. Where is mind? Mind is a hypothetical organ. So that demarcation is there, but we are generally we used to say mental health rather than brain health. But sometimes people are using synonymously, but we should know the basic difference. Mind is different, brain is different. Of course, it is a functionality that we will discuss later. You see, when all the education institutions are suddenly jumped into the new ecosystem in which the classroom climate is entirely different. How can we control the classroom? What about the classroom climate? In the virtual ecosystem, classroom climate is very difficult. Controlling or maintaining conducive classroom climate is very difficult, because the conducive classroom climate is remote. It is not in your hand. It is not in your hand. So what actually happened, and all the students and as well as the teachers are running from pillar to post to know about various skills, to learn about this new skills or competencies to cope up with the new ecosystem, new learning ecosystem. So it leads to lot of mental strains. It leads to a lot of problems, because here the home itself a classroom, home itself is a school, home itself an education institution. In this way, we have to identify this is the work environment and this is the home environment. Where is work environment? Same. Where is home environment? Same. And how to balance this work environment and home environment, and this leads to a lot of mental torture. So what we need is the balancing new way of life and new way of teaching, that is indispensable. I would like to give only 5 important suggestions for you, because as an introduction, because experts are there, Alexandria and other experts are there, they can explain in an excellent way. But I would like to give some suggestions for you how to develop these mental health, more particularly for the teachers and educators. And you see that the formula is very simple, ABC formula. It is my formula, ABC formula. So ABC and AOC. ABC is nothing but area beyond control. And AOC area of control. So area beyond control and area of control. So area beyond control, you know, well, there is a pandemic period. It is beyond our control. We don't know where is coronavirus, how we know how it spreads, but we don't know where it is. It is everywhere. It is everywhere. We don't know whether it is not possible to control it. It is there. It is a situation. Is a pandemic period. The period is pandemic period. Is it possible to control the pandemic period? No, it is not in our hand. It is not in our hand. That is area beyond control. Area of control. That is it is your area. Now we are sitting in my. Actually, I am sitting in my hall, in home. A small hall is converted to office room. It's my area of control. It's my area of control. I can convert my home or small portion of the home into office room or an education institution or teaching learning. This area of control. This area of control. So kindly understand that ABC and AOC formula, that is area beyond control. Area, don't struggle with the area beyond control. Leave it. Nature will take care. And area of control, focus on the area of control. There is a possibilities. There is area of control, very important. And second thing that I would like to mention here is self-care. It's very important. Self-care, that is act of doing something can help maintain our mental health. So we are all the teachers. We know well about how to inculcate this caring of others and the development of mental care. Everything we know well, we can well inculcate. But what about self-care? That is whether we are maintaining our own mental health. Yes, it is essential. Self-care, exercising, reading, journaling, and meditation, or spending time doing a hobby, etc. These are all the way by which we can develop the self-care. And third suggestion I would like to tell about for the development of mental health, more particularly for the teachers, that is a teacher educator, 2M. 2M, nothing but meaningful moments. Meaningful moment is very important. What actually happened in the teaching and learning process, we can move. We know well, even the micro teaching, what we are doing, we are giving marks, we are giving some recognition, even for the meaningful moments. That meaningful moment is very important. We have to move. But what actually happened during the pandemic period, you see the photograph and the sedentary mode. Sedentary mode is the major cause for various mental illness. Let us avoid sedentary mode. And let us move around. You see, in the house, you see these small molecules, how it moves. It is dynamic. These small molecules are how dynamic it moves, even the small space. So moving around, even inside the house, we got to move. There is no other way. Not outside, because we have to maintain the social distance. Not outside, inside the house. And physical transition from one room to another. So these are all some way by which we can develop that meaningful movement, and in which we can develop that, through which we can develop the mental health. And see, the next one is self-compassion. Self-compassion is the ability, it's an ability, nothing but ability to turn understanding, acceptance, and love inward. So we have to look ourselves inward. Many people are able to extend compassion towards others. So towards others, it is very easy. Of course, difficult, but somewhat easy. But what about inward? What are we inward? It's a difficult one. So self-compassion is the ability to turn understanding, acceptance, love inward. We have to love ourselves. We have to understand ourselves. We have to understand we accept our own plus and as merits and demerits. So we have to look inward. That inward, inner vision is very important for the development of mental health. That is self-compassion is very important. You see, I have gone through some of the research article how to develop the self-compassion because it's a very important component to develop the mental health among the teachers and teacher educators. And see the Christine Neff, a self-compassion researcher describes self-compassion as having three elements, or by means of these three ways we can develop the self-compassion. So self-kindness, or refraining from harsh criticism of self. So harsh criticism of not others. We should avoid harsh criticism of others. But we have to avoid harsh criticism of self also. So that criticism should always be constructive. So constructive criticism of self is important rather than harsh criticism of self. Recognizing one's own humanity or the fact that all the people are not perfect and all people experience pain. So we have to understand our own humanity. See, there is no perfect. All the people are not perfect. We can be nearer to the perfection. We can be nearer to, we have to accept it. We can be nearer to the perfection. It is not possible to be a perfect man, nearer to the perfection. That's all. So all people are experiencing pain. So such is the type of recognizing one's own humanity is very important, and mindfulness. So non-biased awareness and biased or non-biased awareness of experience, even those that are painful, rather than ignoring or exaggerating their effect. So these are all the three important way by which we can develop the self-compassion and in turn develop the mental health. Why I am insisting all these points? The reason is that I would like to conclude here because that reasonable expectations are very important. Reasonable expectations are very important. The reason is uh, we should understand the situation. We should understand the situations. So based upon the situation, we have the limited expectations. What is the situation now? The pandemic period. The pandemic period, we have to limit our expectations. The expectation should be in accordance with that situation. So situation based expectation or limiting expectation based upon the present pandemic situation improves their mental health. It is in our hand only. And change is a permanent. We should have the mindset. Change is permanent. Nothing is permanent. Only change is permanent. Change ourselves. Otherwise, change will change you. Change ourselves. Otherwise, change will change you. Thank you very much for your patient listening. And why I am insisting all these 4 points. These 5 points are very important. Our 5 suggestions are very important to develop the mental health, more particularly for teachers and teacher educators. I identified that what are the problems faced by the teachers, that is the mental health problems faced by the teachers during the pandemic period. And I have given some suggestions. These suggestions are nothing but prescription, and you please follow these prescription. Once again, I would like to say all these prescription once again. First and foremost point you have to keep in your mind ABC formula, that is area beyond control and area of control. Identify whether you are struggling with the area beyond control or area of control. That is why you see the diagrammatic illustration itself, I put a red mark in the area beyond control, whereas the green is the area of control. That is the first point. Second point, once again, I got to summarize it, self-care. Self-care is very important. Take care of yourself. Self-care is very important for mental health. And also we need meaningful movement. Of course, a lot of biological reasons are there, how it improves the mental health. That is a different one. And the third one is the self-compassion. It's a very important thing. And final one is the reasonable expectation. Our expectations should be very reasonable, more particularly during this pandemic situation. If we are following all these things, definitely as a teacher, I have to say you may have a very good mental health. Thank you very much for giving this opportunity. You can ask any questions regarding this point that I have given here. And once again, I thank the authorities of the Western College of Education, more particularly Dr. Selva Kumar, principal of the college, for giving me the opportunity to deliver the thematic address regarding the mental health issues of the teachers during the pandemic period, during the COVID-19. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, Professor Sivakumar, sir, for your wonderful input. Sir, you beautifully explained about some of the strategies on how teachers should take care of their mental health. Thank you so much, sir. Now, we are eagerly waiting to listen from Dr. Alexandra Harrison, ma'am, and Dr. Andrew Squashy. I am giving the session to Dr. Alexandra, ma'am.
Well, thank you all so very much for inviting us to be a part of this series. And thank you to Dr. Sivakumar for that wonderful introduction. It's amazing to see how much similarity there is between what's happening in India and over here in the United States. Alex and I wanted to take some time to share about what we've learned from teachers here in the US, and then to hear a little bit from everyone about their own experiences here in India with teaching during the COVID pandemic. It was quite sudden the way COVID started and how teachers had to change so quickly, wasn't it, Alex?
Yes, as a matter of fact, just as Professor Sivakumar so eloquently noted in his thematic address, the teachers that I spoke to all said that they had to make such a rapid switch from their classroom to the curriculum online. There was no time for preparation, and many of them complained that there was a lack of a plan. Their daily routine became completely disrupted. They said, if you have children of your own at home, how do you manage their care and your work? To say nothing of self-care, as Dr. Sivakumar has mentioned. If you live with a partner, how do you divide up the time so that one works remotely while the other takes care of the children? What if your children need you to be present during their remote class time? And how do you manage the household responsibilities? For example, one teacher explained, my husband and I worked out a schedule where I would devote the first part of the morning to our children while he worked remotely. This is when they would get most of their schoolwork done, the children that is. And then my husband would take over until lunchtime, while I held my meetings with my students and prepared curriculum and communicated with families. My husband would then go back to work while I kept our children entertained. I found myself doing a big chunk of my work in the evenings, making it for a very long day for me. And Andrew, I think the transition of the classroom work to the online teaching was harder than anyone expected.
I agree. I've heard teachers say that they have doubled their work hours in order to prepare for classes, and they're taking that extra time, as pointed out, to consider how to create an engaging and effective learning environment for their students. What schedule do we follow? How do we promote active learning? Do we break up into smaller groups or keep the class together as a whole? How do we innovate so that every student with their own unique strengths and challenges can stay involved in the lessons? How do teachers adjust for a student's level of development and recommendations around screen time, often finding that the youngest students are the most challenging to teach? These are all very complicated questions. And then even after doing all this work, teachers sometimes see that their students are distracted by video games or cell phones or other side activities. Or maybe they don't even have an idea that their students are distracted, and this can be just as disruptive to the lesson and the learning environment. And it hasn't been that easy from a technical standpoint, has it?
No, as a matter of fact, all teachers don't have the same comfort and familiarity with platforms like Zoom and Skype and WebEx, especially people of my generation. And this can cause a lot of confusion and mistakes and also anxiety. Most teachers talked about the struggle of trying to figure out how to teach remotely and what children would be able to process through Zoom meetings. This caused them a lot of stress since all that they knew to do was turned upside down. And there were also the tech problems. What if the internet fails? What if it fails during your lecture or during your time with a child or a group of children? And also, I've heard that the tech challenges and many other challenges are made much more difficult without institutional support. Have you heard about that, Andrew?
I have, just like teachers, school administrators are also overwhelmed too. They don't have the answers for how to make these transitions to the classroom. So often the responsibility has been shifted onto the individual teacher. Each teacher has been asked to create their own unique plans while still being held to the standards of evidence-based and results-driven education. And it's not just the designing of lessons either, but also the way that relationships have changed for teachers. Isn't that right?
It's absolutely right. A number of teachers told me that what troubled them the most was maintaining connections with their students, with their relationships. The lack of live connection bothered them a great deal. They felt a loss of the sense of community. The social and emotional connections with students and other teachers and administrators is just been broken. One of the teachers told me, you don't realize how much you rely on this until it's gone. The sense of the classroom as a kind of family and the support of school administrators passing by their desks and saying, hello, how are you? The corridor chats with other teachers, the camaraderie, and the lack of opportunity to check in with colleagues to get what we call curbside consultations. That can exacerbate self-doubt. Have you heard about that exacerbation of self-doubt, Andrew?
Oh yes, I have. Yeah, many teachers are concerned that the quality of the instruction that they're giving is not what it should be. Part of this is that they have no point of reference. They have never seen teaching in a remote classroom before, and they don't know how their own classroom compares to another classroom in their school or across the country. This self-doubt often consumes whatever little remaining free time a teacher has and might leave them with a feeling of inadequacy and failure.
Yeah, and talking about failure, one of the consequences I've heard teachers worry about is about the security of their job itself.
Right. We've already talked about teachers staying up until 10 o'clock or later at night, then waking up at 5 a.m. To start work again. And quite often they're doing this in part because they want to prove their worth to their school system. Teachers know that schools are facing a very tough time economically right now, and they're sometimes worried about losing their jobs depending on the type of school they work for. In fact, many teachers, at least here in the United States, have already lost their jobs. It's very common right now for teachers to feel undervalued. And what would you say, Alex, about some of the individual challenges that a student faces?
Well, what I've heard, both from teachers and from parents, is that it varies a great deal how students respond to working remotely in their academic studies. Some students just cannot work remotely easily. Some children, especially those with learning disabilities, and sometimes learning disabilities that have not yet been diagnosed, for example, certain executive function problems like focusing and maintaining attention and initiating tasks, these students struggle in learning if they don't have a teacher in the room with them to help them stay organized, to literally or metaphorically stand behind their chair and nudge them to stay on task or to help them keep going. Or some children just lack self-confidence and don't do well if their teacher is not there to respond to a question or to affirm their effort.
And I've also heard teachers wonder about their students maintaining their current levels of learning and competency too.
Yes, and can be very demoralizing to teachers. Teachers are worried about the backsliding of teachers' progress, losing the progress that they've made so far in the academic year. Teachers of younger students worry about the children not having socialization experience with other children, learning how to share and learning how to do play together, play in small groups or even larger groups, especially those children for whom this was an important area for growth. And older children got behind in their academic work. This was particularly hard if they were preparing for entrance exams. And another concern is that students all don't have the same access to resources that are necessary for remote learning. Have you heard that too?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I have. Both teachers and students frequently don't have sufficient resources to overcome these challenges imposed by teaching during the coronavirus pandemic. And I've seen teachers saddened to see their most vulnerable students fall further behind because they can't afford extra tutors, other additional support. Money, internet access, and computer access are common issues that we've all seen and faced. And even if both parents are able to work extra hours, that means that they have less time to work with their children at home. And those aren't the only difficulty parents are experiencing either, don't you think?
No, they aren't. Parents also have to support remote learning directly by working with their children at home. And if parents are too busy with their work, which they're very anxious about themselves, remote learning for their children just can't succeed. And also, some parents have begun to question whether remote learning is really valuable and effective, which adds to the undermining of teachers' sense of value. Often these parents are led to criticize schools and even teachers, and they lose confidence in the schools. And this is very difficult for teachers to manage. It really diminishes their self-confidence and self-esteem even further. All these factors draining teachers' self-confidence and self-esteem, that must create a problem for teachers' mental health. What can you say about that, Andrew?
Well, the teachers that I've spoken to, and just hearing things more broadly, I've seen loneliness and isolation emerging as two of the more common experiences for teachers. It's quite sustaining and important for teachers to see each other, like you've already mentioned, and to chat with their colleagues even for just a few minutes and offload some of that stress that comes with being a teacher. But now that they've lost these hallway conversations, many teachers feel quite isolated. And they're at increased risk for anxiety and depression. That's one thing that I've heard about. If a teacher does not live with family or a roommate too, these are often the teachers most affected by loneliness. But I'd also say that there are a lot of things, and again, as Dr. Sivakumar has pointed out, that can be helpful in countering some of these stressors. What would you say, Alice, you've seen so far?
Well, I agree that Professor Sivakumar has mentioned many of the important self-help practices. I think that we also want to stress them. We want to reiterate his emphasis on self-tolerance or self-compassion. That is critical because when teachers are critical of themselves, it takes away some of their energy. It takes away some of the confidence that they need to persevere in their work. It's also critical to lower expectations of our students, but also of ourselves as teachers. It does not work to have the same expectations of yourself or of your students that you had before remote learning was suddenly, abruptly instituted. It's helpful to schedule time for yourself, to get physical activity, to read and write in your journal and meditate and take time for hobbies. Stress regulation is usually thought of as occurring from top down and bottom up directions. And reading and writing in a journal is an example of a top down regulating, that is using your cerebral cortex, your thinking brain, to sort of help you make sense in a more complex and effective adaptive way of what's going on. And then exercise, especially if it's rhythmic, repetitive motor activity, is bottom up self-regulation. And that is, it's very interesting because meditation, I would consider both top down and bottom up, since the repetitive rhythmic part is the emphasis, the focus on breathing. But also the top down part has to do with freeing your mind of current preoccupations and focusing on the moment that you're experiencing at that time. Also, there are some hobbies that you can do with your hands, like knitting or other kind of needlework and gardening, that are bottom up. But most hobbies like painting and other creative activities are mostly top down. I think it's good to have a mix of both. And
That's
don't
that's
you
very
agree with
helpful,
that?
Alex.
Yeah.
Oh, I would completely agree with that. Yeah, and I'm wondering if you can also speak maybe a little about support groups for teachers.
Yeah, well, here in the US, we have online, there are hundreds of self-help groups for just about everybody or any particular problem that you have. Some of them are open discussion groups with other teachers or other people who are working with children, for example. And others are just sort of self-organized groups that colleagues and friends make with one another. These self-help groups can be so useful because, as we said before, the sense of isolation and the lack of those wonderful hallway conversations can be at least in part made up for with these self-help groups. But one thing that I worry about with everybody under so much stress is that teachers may be pulled in many directions. They get demands from students, they get demands from parents and administrators, but also from their own families. What can they do to protect themselves?
Right. From what I've seen, I think one of the most helpful changes that teachers can make is to set boundaries on a number of different levels. For example, if it's possible to have a dedicated workspace at home, ideally outside of the bedroom, the physical boundary can be very helpful. It's also important to know your own comfort level for in-person instruction, if that's something that you're being asked to do. And I think every individual needs to understand their own circumstances, which are different, and everyone should feel permitted to make their own decisions for how to keep themselves and their loved ones safe. On the personal level, it's important, as you said, to acknowledge when you need time for yourself, time for self-care, time with family or loved ones. And professionally too, the way you've spoken about changing the expectations being placed on teachers by their school administrators and by their students' families. We should expect productivity to decrease both in teachers and in their students, and this is okay. It's important to be able to draw boundaries around how many hours are spent at work and how much access students' families have to their teachers. And then finally, I think even a frame of mind and having a boundary over the way that we think about things is important. To not be apologetic for the fact that we do have limitations and we can only do so much, to not blame ourselves for having these limitations, and feeling justified in talking with other teachers and school administrators and our students' families about what they can really expect of us.
Yeah, that's such a good point, Andrew. And Professor Siva Kumar spoke of meaningful moments. I frequently speak of what I call magic moments, and those are the positive experience with others, and they accumulate, especially if we take special notice of them. These magic moments accumulate, and over time, they can create a shift into a new, more adaptive state of being. Well, now that we've talked about what we've heard from the US teachers, maybe we can hear some thoughts from our Indian colleagues. Can we have some questions and comments from the floor or from everywhere?
Yeah, you have rightly pointed out that magic moments are very important. And what we are missing is by means of this virtual classroom, teachers are unable to radiate their love and affection. That care is very important. You say that, of course, we are maintaining the social distance, but the care, what should I say, the radiation of love, affection, these are all missing. That may affect the teacher, because as a teacher, we have to radiate love and affection among the children. Of course, teaching is something very important, but the thing apart from teaching, what we have to do is we have to nurture good characters and good habits. And by seeing the teacher or by seeing the habit of the teachers, indirectly the learner can nurture that good social habits. That socialization is missing here, and the teachers are often struggling how to cope up with this problem, that is socialization and the affections, and these things cannot be carried out as like that of the face-to-face classroom. What can we do?
Well, I think that that takes a great deal of creativity, and I'm sure that all of you have ways to think about this. I don't think anything can really take the place of face-to-face, because there is all sorts of nonverbal communication that goes on between two physical bodies with minds and emotions. And actually, that's one of my special areas of interest is studying that nonverbal communication. But on the other hand, there are other ways maybe of drawing on cultural traditions that can connect children, our students, with our shared past. So I wonder, I mean, you would know much more than I would about this, but I wonder if some traditional stories might be used to engage students and teachers with some common shared experience, which has at base humanity. I remember when I was in Karnataka last year, some of the children were telling folk stories, and the folk stories were known by everybody. So in a way, we inhabit our tradition, you know, we inhabit it, we even feel it in our bones. And so there may be some way of using some of these traditions to feel again that social connection. Any other thoughts or questions? Or what about you, Andrew?
Well, I was going to say there's some great questions here in the chat, and I think we've touched a little. One of the questions, how is it possible to increase student-teacher emotional bond without being able to be with them physically? And you've commented about the importance of the physical, but also a little bit about, you know, ways that maybe you might be able to establish that connection. And I think I've seen students and children appreciate the reassurance that a teacher does want to be there for them, and that they are there. They want to receive them, even though it's through this sort of strange virtual connection, that they are still present for them, and making that known to the students, paying attention through the computer. It's very draining though, isn't it?
It is, but you know, there's one amusing kind of anecdote is that some of my students, like Andrew, who are child psychiatry trainees, they have been doing virtual play therapy sessions with their students. And some of them have told me stories of how the very young, their little young patients have said they want to show them, they want to show them their room, they want to show them their house. And so the child takes the computer and the clinician sees is the ceiling or maybe the floor, where they don't see the actual object that the child tells them they want to see. And then my students say, well, they tell the child, well, I don't see it yet. You have to change the computer. And I say, no, that's wrong. The child is showing you his upside down world. And that's a way of being connected.
Right. You know, I see another great question, and I'm curious to see if you've heard some stories, success stories of teachers who have taken on the challenges and opportunity and found new ways of coping with it. Have you, either Alex or Dr. Siva Kumar, heard these stories?
I mean, finding creative ways of rising to the occasion, sort of?
Yeah.
Well, the teachers in the school that I consult to have divided their time between small groups of children and moments of one-on-one. But I'd like to hear some stories from the Indian teachers about what they have discovered. Anybody? 5 people raised their hands. I can't see them, but could one of you speak?
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you, Dr. Alexandra Harrison and Dr. Andrew Squashy for the inputs. Your inputs were really valuable to us. The way you discussed about the issues to make us understand the need for mental health of teachers was wonderful. We thank you for sharing your experience and knowledge with us. I would like to express my special thanks to both of you for accepting my invitation. And Alexandra ma'am was discussing with me, like, what kind of topic will be beneficial to the Indian population. I was amazed to see the way she was taking up the responsibility. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, sir. Now I request Mr. Anthony Santaseelan, Assistant Professor of Meston College of Education, to put forth the questions to the speakers, if any, in the chat box or in the YouTube link.
Thank you, Jansi. Hello.
Yes, sir.
Whether I'm audible?
Yes, sir. You're audible.
Hello. I'm audible? I'm audible to you?
Yes, sir. Yes, you're audible. Yes, yes.
Okay. Thank you, Jansi madam, for this opportunity. One question to the madam. There is somewhat a new one for the people, those who are in Tamil Nadu. Especially in Tamil Nadu, we have lots of villages and we have a lot of rural schools, and we have most of the thing is, it is new for us, this remote learning. So you are talking about the technical issues, technical problems, internet failures, maintaining the connections with the students, everything. So here, the teachers, we are facing such a huge problem here in Tamil Nadu. The thing is, how as a teacher we will overcome these issues, especially most of the people, they don't have internet connection. Most of the people, they don't have mobile phone, such a connectivity here in India, especially in Tamil Nadu. So how teacher can cope up this issue, especially the mental issue? Please discuss a few issues.
Well, I would like to.
Yeah, I would like to interact because this question is most related to our region, Tamil Nadu. And you see, actually, I am hailing from a village. You see, in my village, most of the people are having the advanced version, Android version of the cell phone. So cell phone is available everywhere. Of course, connectivity may be the problem, but the availability of cell phone, even in a remote village, is not an issue in Tamil Nadu and as well as India is concerned. The reason is I am hailing from a small village. In my village, even some of the people are having a very advanced version of Android cell phone than what I have now. This is the situation what I am seeing. Of course, regarding the connectivity may be the problem. That connectivity, there is internet facilities available. Of course, it is available there, but the speed of connectivity or that infrastructure need of the connectivity on par with virtual learning may be different. But they are having the cell phone and the connectivity. What we have to do is we have to improve that internet facilities and connectivity. Of course, it is there. It is there. You see how many, you see during this pandemic period in my village, people are downloading a lot of Tamil movies and Tamil songs and Hindi songs, and they are enjoying the film by seeing that in the Android mobile. So it is there. Even you say I am very curious. See, some of the people in my village know about the premium version of all these things regarding how to download the CD songs, how to download the latest movie and other things. Everything they know well than me. So skills are there, and availability of Android cell phone is there in villages. The thing in Tamil Nadu and as well as in our country, what we have to do, we can improve little bit connectivity. Of course, connection is there, but we have to improve the connectivity. I mean the speed on par with the standard required for online learning or virtual learning. That may be the need of the world. That's my opinion.
Well, you know, I have some thoughts about that
Yes,
too.
yes, yes.
One thought really goes back to what all of us have spoken about in terms of expectations. I have been working remotely to UP, Uttar Pradesh, for about 8 years now, through some of my connections, colleagues there. And frequently the internet goes black and we just accept it. You know, we just wait. That's just part of the experience. So if we can lower our expectations and be more tolerant of the limitations we're working under now, that helps. The other suggestion I have is that when there are small groups of citizens, of teachers and of children who can contain the potential for infection by limiting their connections to just small groups, then they can share the internet, computer or cell phone. So those are my thoughts, but I guess, you know, we all have to tolerate some of these interruptions. I've had some of my lectures stop right in the middle, and it's very disconcerting.
You are right. You are right.
Yeah, next question, madam. Shall I put forth the next question?
Yes, sir. Yes, yes.
The next question is, do you think that the emotional bond between, so you're already discussed in the session itself. As far as the participants' questions, they asked this, without seeing the face of the students, without hearing the voice of the students because of the connectivity, most of the people, those who are taking class in Zoom or any other platform, they are stop the video, they stop, they mute the mic for the better bandwidth connectivity. So it really interrupt, it really between the teachers and the students.
I don't know if I can really respond to that very well, but you know, you get a huge amount of information from facial expression. That is a very large part of the way we communicate with each other, even though much of that is out of our awareness. By the way, I do want to emphasize the fact that the website for my nonprofit supporting child caregivers, it has a great deal of information about all of these subjects. And I would really be so happy if you would make use of those resources online. But the other problem is that even though so much of our communication is through facial expression, some children are unable to receive that because of developmental vulnerabilities. Children, even a little bit on the autistic spectrum, have a very hard time looking at faces. And then another issue is that there is a lot of nonverbal communication that goes on, even that requires physical proximity. And we're just beginning to learn about that, really. There's some things in odors, for example, that we communicate to others that give the other person a sense of our emotions. So we do lose a lot by not being physically present, but at least we do have, especially for older children, language and facial expression.
Yeah, I do agree with you because that body language, that is non-verbal communications are very important. And actually, we are missing because in the case of online and the classroom, what we are practicing, that is in our classroom, what we are practicing is that we will give the attendance only when you are switch on the video. And your video presence is must for our classroom, what we are practicing. So we are giving attendance in 3 different ways. One is not only your physical presence, but also we are giving marks for your interactions and your facial expression and other things. Video is essential. At the same time, it should not be in a still mode. It should not be in a photographic or still mode. And if anybody is switched off that video mode and we put that particular X is switched off that video from this time to that time, that is your activities are traced. And if it is 45 minutes a class, that your video presence is essential at least for 30 minutes. At least for 30 minutes. Likewise, we are forming our own norms and rules and regulation or protocol for online programs. When we are forming such a type of online protocol or online norms, rules and regulations for conducting these type of classes, definitely we can overcome all these issues and problem. What I think so.
The next question, madam, it's in the chat box. How to motivate, how to inspire the students, those on the online learning? And in addition to that, how we will conduct the extracurricular activities to the students through online mode? Because why the students they're very passive, they are merely a listener, then how we can overcome this issue? Over to the speakers.
This is such an important question. Andrew, do you have any ideas about how to activate the students or how we might activate the students? Have you heard anything from the teachers that you've talked to?
You know, I think that every person responds best when they feel seen and they feel like their unique you know, challenges and strengths are being taken into account. And so I would say for one, just doing our best to stay in touch with students, connect with them, let them know that we see them as who they are and we're paying attention to their specific needs can itself be very motivating. And the second point I would say, and I think this also speaks to distraction, I think educating our students about this whole new environment is another very important thing to be doing. We don't even know how to teach remotely. And our students don't know how to be students in this environment either. So letting them know about the challenges that happen with this, letting them know the importance of turning off your cell phones and not playing video games on the side, and that, you know, it's a very, and empathizing with them that it's a very challenging and a distracting thing to do, but if we all work together, we can still have an effective way of teaching. And I think those are the greatest successes I've heard and the most motivating experiences that I've heard.
Yeah, I think it's such a great point to empathize with the difficulties the students are having, the teacher doing that, because also older students, often, for example, teenagers, have their parents hanging over their heads, watching what they're doing all the time, and this drives them a little bit crazy. They don't have to have their parents over their shoulder at school. But this is what happens sometimes when the parents are so worried that they're not going to pass their exams, and are they really doing their work? It's very challenging.
And the next question is, do you think that the so much to the students, so that in the case, what I'm trying to say is the mobile phone is given to the students. So do you think that the students go in the wrong direction or the wrong way, in spite of the listening the online games like PUBG and some other things? Go to speakers.
Yeah, you spoke about that, Andrew. I didn't hear about that so much, but what did you hear about students getting distracted by playing games and things on their cell phone instead of paying attention to the remote class?
Well, I think it speaks again to the unique aspects of each student. The best students are going to be the ones that are most able to naturally pay attention. And it's the students with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder and learning difficulties, and or just even a disruptive home environment that are the ones that are going to have the most difficulty with not playing on their phones or doing other things on the side. And you can collaborate with parents. If you notice that the learning environment at home is distracted, you can jot a quick note of it down in your notebook. You can, if the parents are collaborative and able to work with you, you can mention these things that you've noticed to them, and see if there's any ways to change the home space that it is less distracting. You can mention to the student directly, maybe on the side, not in front of them. So it's not in front of the entire class, so it isn't as shaming, but you can mention individually the importance of paying attention. And sometimes those things work and sometimes they don't, but I think every little effort that can be made can sometimes take us at least one step in the right direction.
I think those are such good ideas, Andrew. I really like that. And I like the fact that you emphasize again, children with learning difficulties, even though they may be very intelligent, they may have a hard time focusing and maintaining attention, for example, attention deficit disorder. Another thing I wonder about is whether some children might, teachers might collaborate with children and parents to find some kind of self-regulating activity they can do that doesn't distract them from the learning, from the lesson content. For example, some children have, beads that they can play with in their hands, the fidget toys, we call them in the US. But that again is a kind of a repetitive rhythmic motor activity, which is highly regulating. And, there may be other small self-regulating behaviors that can help children attend. Other questions?
Thank you, the speakers, especially the ma'am and Andrew sir and Sivakumar sir. It's a great discussion session we have. I think we have covered most of the questions which is in the chat box. Over to Jansi, madam. Please unmute, madam.
Yes. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Anthony, sir. Now I request Dr. A. Jayanta Mary, Assistant Professor of Education, Meston College of Education, to propose the word of thanks.
The roots of all goodness lie in the soil of gratitude. On behalf of the management, principal, and staff of Meston College of Education, I deem it as an immense pleasure to propose this vote of thanks. First and foremost, I thank God Almighty for his abundant blessings he has showered on us in this virtual session. I start with my sincere gratitude to our resource persons, Dr. Alexandra Harrison, training analyst at Boston Psychoanalytic Institute, assistant professor in Harvard Medical School, and president of Supporting Child Caregivers Organization, Massachusetts, USA, and Dr. Andrews Scoiret, fellow in child psychiatry at Cambridge Health Alliance, Cambridge, Massachusetts, USA, for enlightening us with wonderful insights. It was a correlative session and many indispensable points were put forth and elaborated. Indeed, the session was fruitful to every one of us. Thank you, Dr. Alexandra, ma'am, and Dr. Andrew, sirs. Thank you. I would like to accord a sincere gratitude to Professor P. Sivakumar, Professor and Head Department of Education, Alagappa University, Karaikudi, Tamil Nadu, who is an experienced and eminent educationist. We are honored to have you prelude today's topic. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Urvis. Thank you.
At the outset, I place my sincere gratitude to our management members of Meston College of Education for their constant support. I record my sincere thanks to our principal, Dr. S. Devasagam Selvakumar, a dynamic and flexible person in all academic matters, for giving us a warm welcome and for being a beacon of light to all of us. His tireless support made us stand in great heights. Thank you, sir. Furthermore, I would like to express my sincere thanks to Mr. J. Anthony Sondasilan, Assistant Professor of Education, and Professor P. Sivakumar for jointly coordinating the question session. And a special thanks to our speakers for patiently answering to all the questions. Thank you very much. I hereby acknowledge our Mistress of Ceremony, Dr. J. Jansi Priya, Assistant Professor of Education, for her efforts towards anchoring today's program. I owe a great thanks to all the participants for their enthusiastic participation, support, and positive feedback. Thank you, one and all.
Thank you, Dr. Jayanta Mary, ma'am. Now I request Dr. Eugene Michael, Assistant Professor of Mathematics Education of Meston College of Education, to play the national anthem. And I request the participants to stand on their respective places for the national anthem. Thank you, Dr. Eugene Michael. Tomorrow we can meet at the same time using the same link. Feedback form will be posted on the last day of the webinar. your attendance will be monitored by the organizers. We will see you tomorrow. Thank you all. Thank you, Alexandra ma'am. Thank you, Andrew sir, for your presence. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for sharing your knowledge with us. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew sir. Thank you.